So it's approaching the end of the year, most of the major hardware launches have come and gone, and if you're looking to build a gaming PC, well, things look very different to how they did at the start of the year. So I wanted to make this video because I know that not all of you watch every single CPU, GPU, and case review that goes live on the channel. Consider this video a bit of a summary and what you need to know before you build a gaming PC before the year closes out. That includes what parts are good, what parts aren't so good, as well as a few different gaming PC build templates at different price points. So if you are in the market for a new PC build, or maybe you're just upgrading some components, this video should get you up to speed. Now, probably one of the common questions that you might have if you're going to build a gaming PC is whether you should wait for upcoming hardware. There's nothing worse than dropping $400 on a GPU for your new gaming rig just for a faster one to release a couple weeks later for the same price. And at least for now, as far as we know, most of the major CPU and GPU releases this year that are relevant to building a gaming PC have already happened. We do have two exceptions though, and especially if you're looking for a budget GPU, these two might be worth waiting for, and that is the RX 5500 from AMD and the upcoming GTX 1650 Super from Nvidia. So again, if you are looking for a budget GPU around 150 to 200, those two might be worth waiting for. I'll also mention that if you're looking to build something more high-end that will also double as a workstation system, you'll definitely want to wait around for Intel's Cascade Lake X CPUs, which have dropped around 50% in price from previous generation, which is absolutely insane. And of course, AMD's upcoming Threadripper 3000 series CPUs, which are going to be pretty much unbeatable when it comes to core and thread count. So if you are looking for more of a high-end desktop workstation system, definitely do not build anything just yet. Otherwise, the majority of you will be looking towards the second and third generation AMD Ryzen processors or the 9th gen lineup from Intel. I will note that there is no clear cut between AMD versus Intel. Both are great options depending on what you're doing, despite what the fanboys from either camp will tell you. Also note that AMD's second generation Ryzen CPUs have received massive price cuts due to their age. We'll be using one of those processors in our build templates. So in summary, at each price tier, going with an Intel CPU will give you a slightly higher average frame rate in games due to their higher single-threaded performance, but for the trade-off in lower overall core and thread count. So if you play mostly lightly threaded esports titles, you might be better off going with Intel, but some modern titles do benefit from the additional cores and threads on Ryzen CPUs, yielding a slightly more stable frame rate in comparison. This will vary game to game though, so please do some research on the games that you play most often. For those wanting the best of the best for gaming, the 9700K and 9900K from Intel's current lineup are going to give you the best return in frame rate, but these processors are only going to be recommended for those pushing very high frame rates. Lastly, there is a pretty significant margin between the second and third gen Ryzen CPUs, so if you can stretch the budget just a little bit further, then it might make sense for you. Alright, now onto the GPU choice, the most critical component of a gaming build. Currently, for a budget GPU, you just cannot beat AMD's RX 570. You can find these now on Amazon for around $119 for the 4GB model and $139 for the 8GB model, and that's going to deliver very capable performance at 1080p if you don't mind lowering your quality settings. Also, the RX 580 seems pretty variant these days in terms of price, but if you can pick one up around the $160 mark, then that's a pretty solid deal too. On Nvidia's side of things, for the moment, the GTX 1660 Super is their best offering in terms of overall value at $229, delivering exceptional performance at 1080p and potentially 1440p too, depending on the title. This GPU also doubles as an excellent streaming option thanks to the powerful onboard NVENC video encoder, a really solid alternative to x264 encoding on an expensive high core count CPU. At the mid-range, AMD currently competes quite well with Nvidia's RTX Super offerings with their RX 5700 and 5700 XT. Now out of these two, the 5700 XT is the better choice in my opinion, and I do strongly recommend going with a cooler and quieter model from a board partner for an additional $20 or so. If you can't stretch the money for a 5700 XT, the RX 5700 is a great option with aftermarket models around the $330 mark, but depending on the games you play and whether you plan on streaming and whether you prefer lower power consumption and thermals, throwing the extra $70 at an RTX 2060 Super might be worth it for you. Same consideration goes for the 2070 Super. On average, the 5700 XT from AMD is better value, but there are plenty of use cases where the 2070 Super does make sense too. Now, the high-end GPU market is rather uncompetitive and pretty much dominated by Nvidia at this point. The RTX 2080 Super is your best option at the $600 price point, and for those wanting the best of the best, you're looking at the $1200 RTX 2080 Ti. Actually, there is also the $2500 RTX Titan, which is a bit faster, but that's more so marketed as a machine learning device. A couple more things now before we look at the gaming PC build templates. RAM is one piece of hardware that has dropped a significant amount over the last year and a half. This means that building an affordable gaming PC with 16 gigabytes of 3200 MHz memory isn't actually hard to do. Another piece of hardware that has dropped a considerable amount is storage, specifically M.2 NVMe drives. These days you can get a fast 500GB M.2 NVMe drive for just a little over $50, and in my opinion this makes it pretty much pointless to be looking at 2.5-inch SSDs of a similar capacity. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the example template builds starting at the very bottom in terms of budget, and I will have all of these builds and parts linked down below in the description. So this is an example of a $300 Ryzen APU system using the R3 2200G, which features onboard graphics. Here the CPU, the onboard GPU, and the memory can be overclocked, seeing as we are going with a B450 motherboard. Again, thanks to the drop in memory and storage prices, we are able to budget for some relatively fast components in that regard. But if I had $500 to budget for a gaming build though, this is what I'd personally go for. The Ryzen 5 2600 used to be a $200 CPU, but thanks to continuous price cuts by AMD, it's now just $117. There you're getting a 6-core, 12-threaded processor which can be overclocked along with the memory. Speaking of which, we have upgraded to 16 gigabytes. We can also now budget for an RX 570, which, as mentioned previously, is going to deliver some insane value at 1080p. With a $750 budget, the GTX 1660 Super is definitely the way to go. We're also able to upgrade the case, the power supply, the storage now up to 1 terabyte, and more importantly the CPU. Now you could either go with Intel's i5 9400F here or AMD's Ryzen 5 3600, both are great choices. It does depend heavily on the games that you play though. Again, in summary, the 9400F is slightly faster on average, but the 3600 does provide better FPS stability in some modern titles. At the $1,000 price point, again, you could go with either the i5 9400F or the R5 3600 here, that is up to you. But more importantly is the graphics card, which has been upgraded substantially to the RX 5700 XT. If you're gaming at 1440p resolution or require high frame rates at 1080p, then this is a really solid build. Above this build, and you're really looking at some high-end hardware. For example, at $1,600, this build can pretty much handle any game that you throw at it. We've stepped up the CPU to Intel's 9700K, thrown in a quiet and capable cooler, and stepped up the GPU to the RTX 2080 Super. The power supply sees an upgrade as well, important for the extra power consumption, and I will just reiterate that this is a build template. There are plenty of different variations for this build if you prefer certain hardware or brands. Now, if you insist on going with the 2080 Ti, I wouldn't change much from the previous build. All in all, you're looking at around $2,200 for an extremely high-end system. If money is no object though, and you just want the fastest gaming PC that you can possibly build, here's an idea of what that could look like. So here we're going with basically the fastest of everything, except for the GPU, of course, with the exception of the RTX Titan. This rig is extremely overkill and expensive, but some of you just do want the best, and here's an idea of what that could look like. So if you are in the process of building a new PC over the next couple of months, or perhaps you're just upgrading a couple of your parts, hopefully this video brought you up to speed. Now I will have all of the parts linked down below in the description, as well as sort of listing it in the different build templates, so you guys can check that out and make changes if you want. As always guys, a huge thanks for watching. Consider subscribing down below if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one.